us a bit of background about themselves and why they're running and why they're qualified and about what they will do. And then the DONA, the District 1 Neighborhood Association, has formulated a number of questions which I've been entrusted with to ask. And so for about 50 minutes, 45 minutes or so, the candidates will answer those questions and to give everyone a chance to speak and to give everyone a chance to hear what others have said before them. What I'm going to do is with question 1, start with Frank and go like this and come to Vince, and then with question 2, start with Jill, and do like that. Question 3 with Kathy, and question 4 we'll start with Vince. We'll just do that until rotating until we get to the end of the questions. The replies should be brief. We've probably got about 5 or 6 questions here at least. We've got 50 minutes to them all, so that's really 10 minutes, 4 candidates. I read the question, 2 minutes each, so it uses up pretty much 10 minutes for each question. If a candidate goes beyond 2 minutes and they're answering a question, we have our enforcer here who will throw those peppers at them.
30 seconds, you're finished.
And
That's how we do it.
any questions? Then after the DONA questions will be an open floor for the rest of the meeting, which is about 40 minutes for questions from the floor. You can address your questions to a specific candidate or to the group. If I feel that one candidate is just fielding too many questions, then I'll ask that for a while the questions be directed to the group. And lastly, I'm sure in this group goes without saying, but we want the tone to remain polite, kind, compassionate, and understanding. And so with that, I will let Vince begin by telling us about himself.
I'm Vince O'Connor. I've lived here for almost 50 years. I came here to go to school at UMass. And I'm running first because I think the council has reached a point, and the form of government has reached a point where its flaws have become visible to a large number of residents, and we have to do something primarily in terms of the rules and regulations of the council to restructure the council committees and expand them so that there's more public participation. And I'm also running to support the school budgets and to have more accurate information provided when the school budgets are being considered, and not have a series of years as we've had where we're being told we don't have enough money, and then we have $5 to $7 million surplus after July 1st. Because I'm running to be one of 2 District 1 councilors. My efforts with others to better North Amherst, which you can see from my literature, my experience serving on elected and appointed government bodies, my current and recent work with children who've attended Amherst Public Schools and their families, my ongoing services personally welcoming and assisting immigrant workers and their families all qualify me to serve the residents of District 1 responsibly and effectively on the council.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
That's okay. I'm finished.
Please.
Hi, my name is Indy Frecker Ete, but you can all call me Frecker. I'm currently the District 1 Councillor serving with Kathy, and I'm running again because I think there is unfinished business to be handled on the council. My first 2 years were a time of learning, and the council is there's a lot that goes on in council, and I use that time to listen and learn. And I'm interested in using what I've learned to focus on infrastructure, for example, roads. I live at the intersection of Montague and Summer, and even being a councillor hasn't saved me from the potholes on that road. Something else that is of interest to me is collaboration. What we see in the country right now is that we have a very divisive politics, and the truth is a divided country starts with a divided town. And for the past 2 years, what I've tried to do is find a way to bring people together. It's something that I want to continue doing because it's something that we need. We can have good ideas, but good ideas in a divisive environment will not get things done.
Hi, I'm Jill Breivik. Thanks to DONA for hosting this and everyone for being here. So I chose North Amherst as the place to put down roots with my family. I spend most of my time here, hiking our trails, swimming at Pepper's Pond, visiting the library here, going to birthday parties at Mill River with my kids. This is home for me. And I'm running because I think that our beautiful community deserves representatives who truly reflect and respond to our needs and our shared vision for this town. Professionally, I've spent almost 20 years working in nonprofits, serving under-resourced and historically excluded communities. That work taught me how to manage budgets, write grants, analyze data, and bring people together to solve complex problems. I know how to evaluate what's working or not working. I also know how to build bridges across divides and make decisions that align with our values. I've also spent years organizing in this community, including working with school budget advocacy groups and co-founding Valley Families for Palestine, which creates family-centered actions in solidarity with Palestinian liberation. That experience reinforced for me that so many of our struggles are connected, that leadership means standing up for justice, even when that means giving up our comfort and our privilege, and that the same courage it takes to speak out on global issues is what's needed to protect democracy and equity here at home. I also bring the perspective of someone who grew up in a town that was massively overdeveloped, where short-sighted decisions pushed out working families and eroded trust in local government. I've seen what happens when development serves outside investors instead of the people who live here. That's why I believe so strongly in growth that's responsible, affordable, and community-driven. My priorities are interwoven: strong schools, fair wages, safe and accessible infrastructure, and housing for that the people who live here and work here can actually afford, while protecting our open spaces and natural beauty that make this town special. Am I done? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Shane. I know many of you, but not all of you in the room, and I think we should prop up that door so everyone can get in.
A lot of it comes through.
I'm
There's a
running
wedge thing out there that.
And there's also a book in that box.
There's a book.
I'm running for
I'm gonna start
re-election.
over.
You want me to start
No,
again?
you keep going, I'm gonna.
Okay, I'm running for re-election to continue to use my skills as an economist as we in Amherst, all of us in Amherst, face pressing fiscal, financial, and growth concerns. My top priorities, and we were asked to only list 2, but I couldn't get it narrow enough, so I'm going to rattle off my top priorities, is to prioritize our budget on essential, highly valued needs. Our schools, strong schools, roads, and services such as fire and ambulance. The next 2 years are going to require very difficult choices and bringing people together to build consensus. To support this effort, I will continue to work, and this is whether I'm elected or not, on state efforts that are going to bring more state money in. The state has been stepping back from our schools, stepping back from our town, and we have very good legislators who are working on some of these issues, and I hope to speak about that more later. Second, I've been chair of the Elementary School Building Committee, and I want to be there when the school opens, and it's going to be on time in September 2026, and we think it's coming in under budget, which will be good news to everyone in town in terms of their taxes. Third, like Jill, I'm concerned that we have to be smart about development. We need development that enhances our community and town, ensures that we keep our open spaces, farms, provides more affordable housing, but does it wisely, and think about senior housing and senior options. Finally, I will continue and commit to continue to be an advocate for North Amherst and District 1. I've been able to help several individuals and community groups. I do respond quickly. What I bring to the council is I'm currently chair of the Elementary Skill Building Committee, I'm chair of the Finance Committee, I'm chair of the Joint Capital Planning Committee because I'm a glutton for punishment, and these are issues that really play to mine. And before I retired and ran for council, I worked at the federal level and also at the union level on labor issues and public issues. So I've been in divisive conflict-driven things and know how to work to bring people together, to really find common ground.
Okay.
I decided to run for re-election out of a commitment to Amherst. Thank you.
Thank you all. So DONA's first question to you has to do with the public schools here.
At least 2 minutes.
And as you know, I'm sure, the enrollments in our schools are down considerably from when my children were in school here. Something like 50%, in fact. So in light of this fact, but really you don't really need to limit yourself to that one fact, what steps should town council take? And what steps would you urge the town council and the school board to take to address this condition and the condition of the schools more broadly? And so if we could start with you, Fred, and then do a little circle.
2 minutes again.
2 minutes each, yeah.
So one of the hardest challenges that I've faced over the 2 years has been handling the budgets, especially its relationship with the schools. There's a lot that could be done with the school budgets, but we do need to realize that a lot of that rests with the school committee. So I'm going to speak about what I think the council can do with the school budget. So one is continue to advocate for state aid. I think it's important that the state handles its responsibilities to the local communities with the amount of money that it gives. Something else that we could do short term is also look at ways to focus on the regional parts that we can have together so we can eliminate inefficiencies. But longer term, we definitely need to have a way for the school committee and the town council to come together to work on the budget so that what we have for the schools will not just be something immediate, but we can be more efficient going forward. On council, I was able to at least raise the idea that we should have a facilitator or someone who could bring these two bodies together. Something else that we could do to bring more students and keep those that we have is maybe advocate for the school committee to have more specialized programs for some of the students. And finally, we can't eliminate or think about this without housing and ways that we could have housing that middle income people in town can afford, that will bring the students here. Thank you.
Jill?
So I am a parent of 2 kids in the public schools. My kids go to Fort River in the Caminantes program, and I think our schools have wonderful people in the classrooms, teachers, staff. They've really weathered a lot. At least in the few years we've been in the schools, I've seen some incredible work working through these budget cuts. And so on this stat in particular, so it is true that it sounds like our enrollment has dropped by half since 2000, but our schools are not still staffed at those same levels. The schools have made deep cuts year over year. We've eliminated a third of regional teachers, a quarter at the elementary level, many staff. We've closed Marks Meadow, the Southeast campus, and now Wildwood, soon to come. And our schools are really lean. I experience it, my kids experience it on a daily basis. And while enrollment has gone down, the number of high need students has held steady. So that's really important to keep in mind. I think in terms of how to address this declining enrollment, I mean, families are opting out for school choice, charters, private schools. I'm involved in the state level advocacy to help change the charter formula, but I think on a local level, it's not just a schools issue, it's a town issue. We're losing young families faster than neighborhoods like Northampton, or neighboring communities like Northampton, and that is a directly impacted by our housing market. If Amherst is not a place that young families can afford, we're going to continue to see this trend. And so, you know, I think the school committee has a fiscal sustainable subcommittee working on this issue. If I were a town councilor, I already am coordinating and you know, in collaboration or learning from the school committee members, and there are several folks running for school committee who are really committed to breaking down those divides and working together collaboratively. So I would be very dedicated to that work.
Jackie?
Ready for next? To not repeat some of what has been said, I'm going to focus on not just the enrollment is down, but state support of our K through 12 is down dramatically. And this, what has been happening is it's pushed more and more of the school budget onto our property taxes, which can't go up any more than 2.5-ish% a year. A primary source for years has been something called Chapter 70. This is the education aid from the state. And in preparation for this, but also for testifying about a week from now, I looked at what it used to be. It's dropped from 40% to 21% in the elementary school of the budget over the last 25 years, and has dropped from nearly 50% for the regional school budget to less than 30%. On top of that, the charter schools, which were set up with the idea that the districts would be assessed the tuition for the kids that leave us, the charter schools are pulling out about $3.5 million a year out of our school system. This comes directly out of the state money. So again, it's money that's not available. We send about $26,000 per student to the charter schools. When a student picks another district school, Amherst goes to Appellant School, we send $5,000. The differences are stark. We need to change those for the long-run health of our schools. But we won't have time to wait for that. So as Jill and others have said, we're going to have to work closely with the school committee to look at what we can do over the next 2 years. We have 2 legislators who I think will bring home money for us, but over the next 2 years, we're going to have to dig deep on our budgets to focus on the most essential services, of which schools are one of them.
Well, I think the first thing we should do is look at the decrease in school population. First, there was the disaster created by the school's refusal to accommodate the Chinese immersion program in-house. That was in the early 2000s. Next was the financial collapse of 08, 07, 08, 09. That kept a lot of people in their homes because there's this, you know, because this is an academic community, people come here and their children grow up here and then they leave and so forth. And we've had a sort of a sine curve over the time I've been here of school populations. At some points, Wildwood and Fort River had 600 students, and other points they had below 400. This is a natural thing. The third problem that we've had with regard to school population has been the building of luxury apartments, luxury priced apartments for students that have essentially set the rents higher, and we've had apartment complexes raising their rents ridiculously and driving out people who still work here but now have to commute, which creates, of course, a global warming issue. So I feel very strongly about any policy that focuses on the spending for kids with special needs. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and 2 of whom had RH factor special needs problems. And I strongly urge I've made a number of, you can go online to my Facebook page and see the proposals I made in my response to the Teachers Union questionnaire, and I think I do a good job of outlining how to bring the council and the school committee together.
So we'll move on to another question now. I'm going to follow this question up with another question, a broader question about housing, because it's come up here a couple of times, and I think everyone in the room would be eager to hear what each of your views is about what can the town council do about this problem that you have almost all spoken to and identified. There's no disagreements about the unaffordability of housing in Amherst and the problem of expensive student housing and the impact that has down the line. So we'll come back to that, but first the question is quite specific to DONA and to our neighborhood, and that is the proposal, if you can call it that, for new student housing along North Pleasant Street there, right from the campus to the right, I believe, is where they are proposing an overlay that would permit the construction of 6-story apartment buildings, 6-story high apartment buildings. So, what position would you urge the town council to take on this matter that is going to be good for it, and why? So, I think, Bill, it's your turn to speak first.
Yeah, so you're specifically to the overlay.
Specifically to the overlay, and so don't worry if you have other things you want to say about housing,
We'll go
because
back
we're
around.
going to cycle back. My next question will be about that.
Okay. Yeah, so on that project in particular, I think it sounds like we will get more information at the District 1 meeting that's coming up this coming week. And so with just the information publicly available, which has been a little bit limited, and in talking to a lot of people at the doors and getting a pretty general sense of what folks feel in our neighborhoods in District 1, I think I'm grounded in the idea that development needs to meet community needs, and I'm not sure if this project is meeting the most pressing needs of our community. I really love projects like the Amherst Community Homes project, where you can see how this is directly helping families and helping people, who will live here long term, build equity, and I don't know if a 6-story student housing complex is sensible planning unless we have really firm affordability and design standards in place. So I think, I'm not gonna say one way or the other here. I think we need to hear from the community. And I think we need to, I think the council needs to set really clear limits on, not just expand UMass's footprint off campus, but encourage UMass to be building more housing on campus. And yeah, I think I get the sense that this would be a really big strain to our infrastructure in an area that is already, the site of a lot of new development. I think we need to pace ourselves, and so I, again, look forward to getting more information, but right now would not be in favor of, with the information I have, this project does not seem like it's right for our community.
There is, as you just heard, there's a meeting here at 6:30 on Wednesday night where 2 planning board members will come, present this idea. Right now it's a potential idea in the concept, which is the best time to have a discussion about it before it gets written down. And I helped organize that to bring them here so they could hear from the people who live here. Their concept is to triple the student population that lives in Puffton Village, Brandywine, townhouses by allowing that in an overlay, to give permission to do that. The good reason they're doing it, or one of the motivations, is to stop the pressure in neighborhoods housing, where the houses are getting gobbled up by investors and then rented out to students. So that's to relieve that. But many of us who have looked at those properties, they're these most affordable student housing in town by or none. They're older, and they're if you walk around Puffton, it's gorgeous. Many of us would like to
Thank
retire
you.
and move in.
I tried.
And there's a Puffton reference. It's beautiful. You know, the idea that you would knock that down to build 6-story buildings, and they would not be at the price point that Puffton Village is now, Brandywine. So the planning board is gonna come and talk. There are some design standards in it, but I think it's important that the community come out. This will be questions, answers, and comments. It won't just be a presentation where we're all sitting back. Because this type of density was never envisioned in our master plan. We're in a village center. We're talking about smaller scale, cottage size, affordable, and student housing, it wouldn't normally even come with affordability standards on it. It would be this. So I think it's important to hear what people have to say and to act early around ideas of this. And I'll just stop there because I've clearly been heavily involved in just trying to bring this to the community. Thank you.
No, I don't think I think I've listened to enough commentary from District 1. I don't really, at this point, need any more information. I think this is a absurd proposal. It is essentially a continuation of, for example, what happened when the Amherst Motel across from Stop and Shop was demolished. And I actually took an immigrant family there with 2 kids to look at those apartments. The bedrooms are tiny. The prices are ridiculous. And that is what we're going to get if this, and quite frankly, one of the reasons that this is happening is because we have the chair of the planning board being the assistant planning director for the university, which I grant him, he's doing an excellent job of advocacy, but quite frankly, it belongs on the outside of the process rather than on the inside. We need to preserve existing affordable housing, not demolish it, so that we can create luxury priced, smaller units that will essentially lock out families and create an environment where the only exterior spaces consist of buildings and asphalt, like North Square. Buildings and asphalt, and one front door to everybody's home. And that is a ridiculous proposal on its face and should be rejected outright.
So the question was, what could the council do about this proposal? And I don't think we should think about it as something that the council in general could work on, because the different councillors from the different districts have different incentives for whatever decision they want to make. So I'll be sitting here to answer that question as a representative of District 1. And I think we do need to think about what the pressures on the infrastructure are going to be. That's the first thing. And clearly it is going to be a lot. If we think about the roads as they are right now, what will happen if we have so much more in this space? Something to think about. But I also like the idea that as representatives, we are getting the people in this district to talk about these issues. And so the meeting on Wednesday is really important, and it's crucial that as many people as can make it come to have a voice in that discussion. And when you have that voice, the results are going to be manifested by what we see from the planning board. So I'm in favor of having discussion from this district, having councillors from this district advocate for the district on housing, and also just thinking about what is the effect on the infrastructure, how quickly do we want things to change in North Amherst.
Okay, so now really just a broader question, focusing specifically on the planning board and the town council's relation to it, and the housing situation in Amherst. And I was frankly a bit surprised when I learned that the town council appoints members to the planning board. Because I've always had a kind of feeling that the planning board was a mysterious group of individuals who met behind closed doors and sprang development plans on the community that only the most informed citizens, of whom I never was one, had any prior knowledge of. Now, this all turns out only the first part of that turns out to be true, which is the town council appoints under the members of the planning board. So that means you have a lot of power to, what would you each do as a council member to ensure that we have, or at least move the planning board to, toward one that you think is more responsive to Amherst community residents' needs? And we'll start with you, Kathy.
So as you just heard, the council does appoint the members of the planning board. In the last few years, not the first year we were on the council, but the last few years, we haven't had enough people applying to be members of the planning board. And the initial committee that sets up the interview, does the interviews, and makes a recommendation to the council has had a particular composition in favor of certain types of people to come on the planning board and less favorable on other types of people. So one of the things is decide what kind of planning board members that we want as a council, just more generally. You would hope it's people that have been paying attention to what's happening in Amherst on housing, on building, that if they don't come in with a lot of planning expertise, they're willing to learn and that show that they've gone to committee meetings and listen. Because the planning board sits both on all the major proposals for permits for a big building in town, but also can be the source of a new idea for zoning change. And the council then gets to vote on the zoning changes. So early on, who's on the planning board matters, who gets hired for it. So at multiple levels, the council can be surrounding this. In terms of more generally, what housing gets built in Amherst depends on the market and whether there's any land available at all. And where there's land available, builders tend to look for the highest price they can get for whatever they want to build. So to influence affordable housing, we've got to be thinking about subsidies, either from the Community Preservation Act or other. There's nothing new that's been built that's inexpensive. This library room, for example, went from a guesstimate of $800,000 to $2 million over a very short amount of time with this expansion. So if we're talking about affordable, we've got to be much more creative. And I'll stop there.
Well, in terms of affordability and housing, one of the best ways to deal with affordability is to preserve the affordable housing we have and to look at doing rent control on some of the single-family homes that have been bought up by outside investment organizations. But I would like to just speak about the planning board issue in terms of the way it has isolated itself from the community. I think at some point we have to end the process of the planning board meeting by Zoom. I have been to a lot of planning board meetings where the public is present. I do not think there is any justification for continuing the process of having the people who make decisions about the property values of every person in this town be able to do so from the comfort of their living room and not have to confront the people who will be impacted by their decisions. Second thing is, I am I think anyone who has professional qualifications who've moved to town and been here 1 or 2 years should apply to be a consultant. You can't plan for a community that you haven't been part of long enough to understand the community and its residents and so forth. So I think that the absurdity of having people be appointed to the planning board 1, 2, and 3 years here in town has to stop. And I certainly believe that at some point we have to stop appointing people who have a professional employment interest in the outcomes of planning board decisions.
So the question began with a discussion between the planning board and the council, and because the council ends up selecting and appointing those who go on the planning board, there's some kind of power, authority that the council has. But this is soft power because it relies on the fact that people have to nominate themselves to be on the planning board. And so in directing that soft power, one of the things that the council could do is indicate its interest on what it expects zoning should be, broadly speaking. Something else, I was on CRC, which is the body that makes this selection. Something that CRC, which is, at this point I can't remember what it's called, but it's CRC. Take my word for it. Community Resources Committee, yes. But the CRC can specify the diversity of those who would be in the selection process, and we could specify it according to district. Development ideas are context specific, and so if they're context specific, if you broaden the playing field so that different people from districts are part of those that are nominated, then that makes it easier to have a more balanced planning board. I think it is important not to vote for people on the planning board who have very specific ideas of what they want planning to be, because again, we want an open mind for that context specific idea. We should be looking for those who are qualified and those who are looking to work together on the planning board.
Yeah, so my perspective on this, I think if we're hoping for, we want planning board members who are objective, not biased, who are diverse and bring different perspectives, but are very well qualified and knowledgeable. That does sound difficult. I think when I think about questions like this, I think a lot about a lot of settings I've been in where we've wanted to recruit people to entities like this, or just have a more robust pool of candidates for things like this. But we say, well, nobody's applying or nobody's wanting to be engaged. Like, that's a red flag for me, and I think that there are a lot of different areas of our government where people don't want to be engaged, or maybe do have the skills and background, but are not getting involved. And as a new candidate and new stepping into this level of Amherst politics, I see a lot of different places where there is a lot of divides and kind of ugliness, for lack of a better way to put it, that is, I think, keeping a lot of people out. And I think we have to look deeper, and we have to look at what is making people feel that way. What are the barriers to engagement on all different levels, from even just showing up at meetings and sharing your voice, all the way to applying to be on a very, consequential committee like the planning board. I think we need to do a better job with that. And I have a long community engagement background. I think I could help bring a change to the culture of the council that would hopefully make it feel more welcoming, like we're folks who want to collaborate and who want to work together, and that would hopefully help us get some better candidates. I think the planning board is extremely important, and I think I would also, just to add to this, like to see, I really like the ability for residents to take the lead and propose zoning changes, even if they're not right off the bat. I think seeing what residents want to bring forward really helps us get a sense of like what's the heart of what people are unhappy with or what they're seeing in their own communities that they want to change.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think I'm going to depart from our agenda here. I see such a great turnout that instead of continuing with some of the questions that DONA has formulated, I think we'll just open the floor now, and if at the end some of the more important questions that DONA has formulated have not been raised by the group, then I might exercise my enormous power as moderator to pose some more of the DONA questions. But I'm pretty sure that they will just come up naturally because they're just kind of in the air now. So I'm going to turn the floor over. If you have a question, just raise your hand and I will call on you. But if you could let us know as soon as you begin to speak whether your question is for all of the candidates or whether you're addressing it to one of the candidates, that would be very helpful. So, the floor is open. Yes,
I have a complicated question.
or,
I guess anybody who knows the answer.
Speak up, Hilda.
Yeah, louder, Hilda, please.
Okay, it begins with, do you know the cost of the services that will be required by the housing that it seems to be the big agenda item for this election? Do you know how much each unit costs in terms of the services that they use? And how do you expect that would impact on the tax rate? And then my second question, which is related, if we go with the project as I've heard for the Mitchell Farm, for example, they're asking for tax increment financing, which means they can spread the tax out before they pay us anything in increments over 10 or 20 years, depending on what you negotiate. Is that something that you would support?
so just a quick point of clarification, you refer to a specific project?
No, the first one is rather general, and the second one is a for instance. If
Oh, I see.
if
For
you
instance.
require a certain amount of affordable housing, which is obviously gonna bring families here, and each kid in the family cost the town at this year's price is $26,000. Do we now have the resources to cover that, and how much would it cost the taxpayer to have families? In other words, this is a planning issue, which the planning board doesn't seem to think is important, but you guys have jurisdiction over any decision the planning board makes. So if you're wanting to bring in family housing for people who live here, well, I guess I'll add to that. We only get 7 units out of the 30 on Ball Lane because that's all we're allowed under local preference. So we're bringing these families in from other places that aren't paying for it. So how do you expect to pay for it if at the same time they're asking for subsidies in terms of tax increment financing, for example? It's complicated, I know.
Okay, so is it, quick intervention, is this a question do you each want to speak to? If you all do, please all raise your hands. So far 2 do. And then I'll give the 2 not raise your hands a chance afterward if you.
And then I'll tell you where this comes from
Okay.
after you get done with it.
So, Kathy, why don't you speak first, and then Vince, and then we'll.
So Vince, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can, whichever, you can go first.
Okay, so I think the larger issue Hilda's raising is when you build housing, it has infrastructure costs, meaning roads, police, fire, schools, and you could list more. And clearly, if it's just build, New York City would have solved its budget crisis a long time ago, because it's building taller and taller and taller, but it still has a budget crisis. So we often don't estimate that other side of what are the costs to us in terms of what the town needs to do to provide more services. You know, even if you say a ladder truck, what do you need a ladder truck for? You need it for tall buildings, right? And they're more than $1 million. So there's that larger issue that we don't pay enough attention to in terms of thinking when we're planning. So that's just a topic that I think we need to do, and we don't have a good way of doing it in the way we measure things. The second is the example that Hilda used of Ball Lane, that if we're bringing in subsidized housing for families, and it's not families who are already living here with children, we're bringing a new group in, and I think everyone knows we're going from 3 elementary schools down to 2 based on projections. What I'm hoping, and I'll just say this because I'm an optimist, is the Leverett School is half empty, the Pelham School is half empty, the Shutesbury School is half empty, so there is capacity for elementary school kids. So we don't have to necessarily think that it's only in Amherst. We can think of a region for some of these things. So it's to think of consequences is what Hilda's saying, and plan in advance for them. And if she hasn't sent it to everyone, she has a paper she worked on a long time ago.
30 years ago.
30 years
The
ago. It
housing-
wasn't just her, it was several people in town tried to put some numbers to this, that it's an out-of-date paper, but the idea is that housing comes with costs.
It was 1993, and it was a town meeting task force.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Well, I actually bring up one incident where the first of the 5-story buildings were built downtown, and when the planning board was conducting a hearing on it, the town manager got up to the planning board and advocated, whom he had appointed, and advocated that they vote for the project because it will bring so much in taxes. Which is, of course, the very problem that Ms. Greenbaum, addressed. We're great about talking about how much it will pay in taxes. I have seen very poor results in terms of the planning board or anyone else in this town talking about the infrastructure and service costs. And I think that that's why I think building your way out of a problem, which I've heard on and off over 50 years, is a simple-minded and quite frankly ineffective solution to it. Requires a lot more thought to deal with the town's problems than simply building more buildings that will pay taxes and then ignoring the costs of those buildings. So, and I think as a practical matter, and I actually took steps to try to deal with this. A gentleman from Jones Properties came to my apartment to repair some holes in the kitchen ceiling that were the result of the upstairs tenant's hot water heater failing. And while he was there, I basically gave him the literature about the new housing project in Pulpit Hill Road and encouraged him to ask his friends. And he lived in town, he's a renter, and I said, please consider doing this. I think that if we did a very good job of outreach to
Give him a
Amherst.
chance, because it's a good sentence.
Yeah.
Finish, Vince, finish.
Okay, so if we did a good job of outreach to people who work in town, we could fill that project with people who already work here. And who may be living elsewhere, but work here.
Except we only get 7 of those
Okay.
units on the local.
No, that's not.
Unless you have something important to add, or do you want to add something? Yeah, please do.
So I have seen Hilda's reports and I've glanced at it, and there's stuff that we could learn from it. Yes, when we build, there are costs that we don't initially think of, and they add to the fixed costs that the town ends up having in terms of services. And we do know that some of the services aren't having as many people as they should have. As for mutual fund, which is, I think, something that you also mentioned, I think it may not be a good idea to develop on that land because of the wetlands, because of the importance of the view. Frankly, if I had my way, I would recommend that it just be donated to DONA. And you all could figure out what to do with that land. There are other places here in Amherst that we can build on. I don't think that that would be one of the places that we should be looking for. I would be interested at the end to look at whatever the plan is, but I think as it stands, there isn't, both from the community and from myself, there isn't a lot of desire to have something on that space.
I'll just add quickly, I mean, I think that what other candidates have said about this pattern of, you know, more housing, more development, not necessarily leading to more revenue, or the way that we want it to play out. I think I'll just refer back to my own experience growing up in my hometown, where development was so rapid, such that it was actually written up in the New York Times. There was an article about my community.
What was your community?
Marlborough, New Jersey.
Okay.
And the way that they, you know, people kind of studied what happened there because it was so extreme. It was a case where the mayor was taking bribes from developers, right? So like super extreme. But I think you would think with that level of property tax, I mean, they developed every square inch of this town to the point where you'd sit in traffic just to get out of your development. It hollowed out the community. So instead of it like does, I mean, I experienced this happening of, you know, you might think logically, numbers wise, it would have that effect of increasing revenue for services. But Kathy, as an economist, I know you have explained this too, and I saw it. I mean, the schools went downhill. We were top in the state when I was in school there, and they plummeted for these very reasons. So this is really near and dear to my heart, and I think that I definitely want to make sure that these trends don't happen here.
Floor is open for another question. Yes.
So I've got a question. What would you do as counselor about the worst intersection in the entire town of Amherst? And why hasn't it been done already?
You talking about this one here?
Right in front of us.
Up there.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
I mean, is there anything you can do?
Yes.
Let's see. I feel maybe we should start now with Craig first this time, and because Kathy and Vince led off on the last question. Do you have a view on this one, Craig, that looks important to you, or?
It is important to me. It is the worst intersection in town, especially if you are a cyclist. Yeah. You get hit with the fact that it's kind of a triangle, and then there are all these potholes. It's awful.
Yeah.
I think there are a few things that we could do. Some will be easier than others. I think, for one, traffic calming would help, even if we don't change the design. So just having a stop sign, for example, along the Sunderland Road, so that I don't have to look when I'm crossing, might help everyone getting to stop. That might help in a way. I know Kathy, over time, has worked on this issue and has experienced the machinations of what bureaucracy can do. And so I could sit down here and say this is what a councillor would do. I wouldn't be accurate. We do have to work with DPW and with others, and they also move with an inertia that is different from the council. It wasn't supposed to be funny. I think the key thing is, as a councillor, expressing the desire of the community to DPW, to the town manager, and pushing to make sure that it gets done. From their perspective, they also have their priorities, but as long as we get that desire out, that is helpful.
Jill, and then whoever.
Yeah, it feels like another area where the priorities, think about prioritization, it feels like the people's priorities are not in line with our town government's
Yeah,
priorities.
exactly, you got it, honey.
Yeah, we see this all over the place.
Say it again, say it again.
Yes, the people's priorities are not in line with the town government's priorities. We see the roads downtown, the intersection downtown being repaved before our roads where people are popping tires on potholes and, these like very clearly terrible intersections being left. I know there's been some progress made on this one, but with lots of effort, when, we have other intersections that were just very basic intersections turned into rotaries, and we certainly love our rotaries, and I don't quite understand it. I think a lot of people feel really just frustrated, and I think we should have a say, and I think there should be a different process, and I think that the council does have that control over the prioritization with the DPW, and I think stepping into that power a little bit more and saying that it's our job to make sure that the people are heard. And there's a lot of backlog that we need to get done. This intersection being a good example of that.
I think this points out the structural problem regarding the council's rules and regulations, which is that they don't have committees of oversight of various town functions. And as a result, they need a public works committee. I served on the public works committee of the town from 03 to 2009. I was the chair of the committee on bicycling from late 80s through the mid 90s. And that worked perfectly well. We met with the superintendent every month. We heard what was going on. We expressed our concerns. We had members of the public come and be given not only time to speak for 3 minutes, but time to interact with the Public Works Committee. That's what I think we need. We need at least a 3-member committee with 2 members of the public who are not councilors to meet with the department every month to hear their priorities and to conduct hearings across the town every year about the public's priorities. With regard to this intersection, I think we have to be respectful of the fact that if what has been proposed in the past were done, it would advantage one property owner and create a real problem for folks who want to go down Sunderland Road.
Yeah.
Finally, I think that a former state representative said that there is a plan on the shelf at the university to provide an exit from the university that did not involve North Pleasant Street. And I think we need to find that plan and to put it on the table because I think that is our problem. All these commuters to the university coming down Sunderland Road, not having a stop sign at the library and so forth. And I think that there are some very practical things we can do, but structurally we have to do something about the council in order to get the public voice into the process.
Kathy?
I think it's a fantastic question. In the first year, the council, when a meeting like this, we set up priorities, fix this intersection, get a East Pleasant Street sidewalk, and we didn't do either. The one thing we did do was this light, which I don't know how many of you have experienced it. The fact that there's a left signal and a right signal did amazing for the flow through there. And I can't tell you how hard I had to work to get that to happen. Because the first price, I found a memo that Vince had worked on with some other people way before the council. With an estimate, we were told it would be 450, 500,000, and they didn't have money for it, and then suddenly the price dropped to 120,000, they had money for it, and it happened. But it was amazing over time what it took to have that happen. So as Vince said, there was a plan, just this. Town applied 3 times to the state for a design that would have changed the way some of the flow did, turned down 3 times, not a strong message on my view of it, having read the grant. I might not have funded it either, but there wasn't consensus either on what to do on it. So the drawings that they submitted were not the drawings that everyone had been in charrette and were talking about. They weren't even the drawings one of the other people, a leader in the town. I said, have you seen this drawing? He said, no, that wasn't part of what we agreed to do. So this is a long-term issue, including building consensus on what would we want to see happen. Do we want a stop sign there? Do we want to try Vince's idea of rerouting traffic? Because it is clearly an intersection that's only gonna get worse if we build up here.
Okay, yes.
I got a question about North Square, and I think that it probably is connected to generally the problem of bringing more families into town, more non-students into town. But, you know, we weren't really in favor of it when they started developing it, but now that it's here, and we have people living in the apartments, I find it kind of sad that the commercial areas are not really working, for the most part, and that the former Atkins is empty, and it just feels like it's gonna be a ghost town, you know? Maybe the provisions there will stay, maybe the coffee shop will stay, but other ones won't be filled up, and I know the same thing's happening in town, businesses don't survive. So, I guess my question is, the reason this is happening is because we just don't have enough people that are interested in coming up here. They go into town for the things they would come here for. Is there a way you can address that? Does it go to the housing issue? Is there an answer to that question? I don't really know.
I just wanted to just give one background thing. One of the issues is the design of North Square has the apartments be separate from the commercial. So often when you have that kind of a building, the apartments try to subsidize the commercial to bring in services for the people who live in the apartments, but they're owned by 2 different entities. So the incentives aren't there for that kind of cross subsidy. And that's a structural issue that was agreed on early on by the builders. So Jones owns the bottom floor and Beacon owns the top floor is another way to simply say it.
Yeah, but there aren't enough people in the apartments really to subsidize the
So it wouldn't be enough, but I'd say there isn't, so the build out on those apartments, they're fairly high rents. Or, you know, I mean, in the commercial, it's fairly high rents, the low margin. So I don't have a good answer for you on, you know, how would you populate that, because it is a population issue. It is also do people even know what's up here in the stores that we've got that were up at the other. They were hoping to bring people down from Sunderland, and it's not clear to me. So I'm gonna let other people speak, but I don't have a good answer for that, because as you said, downtown is suffering from that. Northampton is suffering from it.
Everyone's suffering.
You know, it's not here is this problem and someone else has had it. So you find some communities that are thriving, but they tend to be denser than people living right around the circle.
Right.
I'll just add, I do think it's a missing middle issue, and housing is part of it, but I think it's also the choices of businesses and why they're not, I'm not pointing a finger on this one, but it's just like, it would be great if there were a corner store that were affordable, you know,
Yes.
a place you
Yes.
can get a gallon of milk or groceries, or, I know that Atkins didn't work, I know, so I understand the challenges, but I think in some ways it's challenging because the specific businesses that are there are not accessible or.
And everybody misses Atkins.
Yes.
Where's our grocery store? Where do you get groceries instead of buying yuck and Cumbies?
Or a co-op.
Or you have to
Co-op,
drive,
or,
you have to
know.
drive, down to Big Y, you have to drive to Stop and Shop or.
I don't know why
Yeah.
Atkins couldn't make it. I mean, if Holly were running it, maybe it could, maybe that's, but I mean, I went there all the time for things that I needed, that I didn't wanna drive to Big Y.
I think it was the difficulty of them running two different
Two
stores. And that's
Yeah.
what happened with Jake's too. Jake's was busy, but
Yeah.
I think running two different places just blew their
Financially, it was
minds.
okay.
Yeah.
And I know it's there are a lot of factors that go into that, but
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of missing services and businesses.
Nick, there's
Yeah.
no,
We're gonna move on to another question.
I'd actually like to answer that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, see, I think the problem with North Square is that it was built by an organization that primarily builds urban housing. They were the ones who took over, Rolling Green Apartments, and in return, they got access here and a zoning board of appeals which granted 140 some odd variations to the zoning bylaw in order to build that place. And some of the difficulties associated with it is you have buildings for families with one entrance for the entire building, one front door. There's really no place for children to play. It's mainly asphalt and buildings. And the prices of there are 104 units that are marketed and 26 that are for families, mostly smaller sized units. And when the other units are luxury priced, what we have is people using those units who essentially are part of the town's 7 to 8 month economy. And you cannot sustain a business, especially when those folks are gone at Christmas and Thanksgiving and so forth. We have to be realistic in terms of development about who having this North Square thing, I think, tells us what mistakes we've made and basically, hopefully, we learn from that and not make the same mistakes again. And as we have in the downtown, where we've moved a lot of small businesses out that serve the 12-month, a year residents of the town.
We knew what those mistakes were before it was even built. I gotta say.
Those of us who attended the hearing exactly knew what was gonna happen.
Because all of that was mentioned at the meetings.
Yep.
Nobody was willing to listen to any of the neighbors,
No.
which is why we own Cherry Hill Golf Course too, because we sent the developer away and got the town to buy it because he would not listen to the neighbors.
So, another question, yes.
In terms of the same thing with the intersection, but as infrastructure comes, and students will be coming with housing and all that, the speed limit is horrendous, going anywhere, so it's like 20, 50 settled, it's 20, and otherwise noted, 30, 40, 25. Can we not have a simple one speed limit, especially around here, students speed? I've had we had a committee here talking about speeding, and just the next day I had a car crash in front on Pine Street, because they were going over Amazon truck and hitting oncoming traffic. So speeding is going to be an issue, especially with more people coming here, students, and what can the council members do about that?
Anyone? I think this time, we'll see if we can, I'm starting to become concerned about the time. So we'll just, two to answer this question, then an opportunity, if you feel something important has been left out, for the other two to speak. So, Vince, you want to be one to speak?
I think maybe if we could each do a minute, then all four of us
Okay,
can
I'll
speak
each
to
do a minute.
Yeah, I think that I just want to say, the public ways,
Sorry, Joe.
Wait, so the 30 seconds is after what, after 30 seconds? 30 seconds.
I don't think it'll be meant. The council controls the public ways. If we had a public works committee, we could hear this. Quite frankly, I think it's logical to have the speed limit within a block or so of that intersection all be 25 miles an hour. I think, and I think that would help solve the problem. But I think it would be helpful to have a public works committee where folks like yourself could come to the committee and say, this is illogical, you need to do something about it.
Okay.
So the council can advocate for speed limits again, depending on where you are. In districts, you can advocate for different things and with different levels of intensity. But if you've been in a car, if you've been on a bike, if you have walked and your feet has touched tarmac, you realize that speed limits don't stop people from speeding, especially students. And so we need, in addition to that, some kind of enforcement, but even that requires some levels of resources. So we need to think about how challenging that would be. But yes, we do need speed limits, but we also need enforcement.
Yeah, I know a lot of my neighbors who've worked long and hard trying to get speed limits reduced, particularly around Cushman, Scott Children's Center and other areas like that, and just tirelessly, like it's incredible how much work it takes for residents to try to make any changes like this. I know there was a success recently around the townwide speed limit, but I think, as Vince said, any ways that we can expedite or smooth out whatever that process is and really pull that apart and look at it and see why is it, I mean, residents know best where the most dangerous areas are. I know the area where Henry Street, Shrewsbury Road hits Henry Street, like that curve. My child had a car come so close that a car hit the strap of their helmet when they were riding their bike. I mean, like, we know best, right? The areas that are the most dangerous. So again, prioritizing and hearing the public is key.
You know, as Jill said, the town did adopt a 25-mile speed limit wherever it's not already posted. So what we need to do, what you suggested is great, and I've written it down, is look at all the places where we've got bizarre posting. I mean, this intersection in any direction goes to 30 or goes to 35 or goes to 25, it makes no sense. For state roads, we had to petition the state to lower the speed limit on 63. The town didn't help us, but they did agree to it. So I think going back to that, so trying to figure out, is it the town that's setting it or not, and then what's the entity? So I love that you brought this up because it's also doesn't make any sense what we're seeing up here.
Okay, we have one last question.
We have time for more than one last question.
We will?
We have to go till 5, aren't we?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
we're in good shape time-wise.
Okay. So it's okay?
Yes.
I would like to ask the committee the candidates, what to do on the following problem. I walk around the block often. So on Pine Street, you have two, what do you call them, crossways with those flashing lights. One of them is broken, but anyways, two flashing light crossways. Which doesn't prevent an accident, because once when I was going across, one car jammed on its brakes and the one in back of it came within this of ramming into him. But how is it on Route 63, where I live, Montague Road, we have crosswalk at the church, crosswalk in front of Mill River, crosswalk in front of 134 Montague, and not one light? How do we get some of these flashing light things that are supposed to be so helpful, especially for little kids and their walkers or their parents leaving Mill River and crossing over to go home?
You want to fill that question?
It's the public works
I
committee.
can be brief. My answer to that question is the same answer that I gave to the previous question, which is the council needs to have a committee that folks can go before, make proposals, and go directly from that committee to the council.
And how do we get that to exist?
Well, that is up to the internal rules and regulations of the council, and one of the reasons I'm running is to reform a great number of those rules, because I think the council's structure is really a barrier to public participation and effective oversight, rather than a facilitator of public participation.
Vince, I would just like to say one thing, Vince, we were all talking now about this intersection now being so terrible. Well, the year I got my driver's license, 1966, my first car accident was on that intersection, right there. 59 years ago, it was already awful. So this is a long-running.
Yeah.
Is there a rule that says, a rule in the council that says you can't have a public works subcommittee?
No, we could, what Vince said, we have an enormous number of committees in town, but there's no reason you can't have one. So, in answer to that.
So one could just say, could we have one of those, and then what happens? It takes
But
some
on
time.
examples like this, the counselors who represent you could, if we said we want flashing lights at, and as Barbara just said, we want them, we could probably get it, because if you see on Amity, there's now a flashing light, that was Dorothy Pam. That counselor pushing super hard with a collective group of people saying, here is where we want it. So she wasn't just one person saying it. If you notice the flashing light, I call it the crosswalk to a ditch, up by where the, that is because they plan on putting a sidewalk there, but they got the state to agree to a crosswalk before there was anything built, which was one of the more bizarre things. The state had some money, but I think we could do this. It would be an isolated way of dealing with it, but it was.
It'd be pretty important.
But it would be important.
It's at a state, the crosswalk. This is a state road.
Yeah, it's a state road, so it might be, this letter to the state, but also which level of the state, so, but yes, so I think.
Because Mill River is there, there's a very pressing,
No, exactly, so I'm
need.
just writing it down as trying to focus on a few of these. I think if we focus.
Yeah, the school bus too, school bus stops there too,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I saw this, you had your hand up before,
Yes.
yeah.
So we have all of these blinking lights for crosswalks, and only half of them work. You know, they're not being maintained.
Yeah, there's one at Bridge that doesn't work, you press it, nothing.
Yeah,
Well-
nothing, yeah, it's jammed, basically.
So,
Also, there's the flashing speed limit sign on North Pleasant. I think it's pretty effective. I see cars, including myself, slow way down as I get to that. If it says anything over 35. Why not put them up all over?
Yeah.
It can't be that expensive.
So anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I walk around this neighborhood a lot, because I live here, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to move here, is because it's so walker friendly. But when you have these crosswalks where half of the lights don't work, and they're not maintained, it's like, I mean, I got caught in the median strip last night trying to cross, because somebody didn't see me.
So, I'm just going, we're going to move on to the other questions, but, with respect to these kinds of issues that come in now, like crosswalks not working, more lights, I would just urge anyone here who is concerned about that to join DONA. This is one of the forums for, you could just get in touch with your current, counselors. And you should do that, but if you want to aggregate your voice with other voices who are speaking to these kinds of issues, then join DONA, because DONA meeting, this is becoming a DONA meeting right now, and that's what DONA is for. So, Meg.
I just want to add, you took the words out of my mouth, but I brought up here, it's already happening, the way to sign up to get on our email list, because this kind of, everything we've been talking about pretty much since we got here, the combination of community and organizing and influence and getting smart people together and elected officials is a combination that's more likely to work than just every 2 years having an election and hoping for the best. So we're lucky we have this organization. You can make sure, we never share the email list with anybody. We don't put anyone on it who doesn't ask to be on it. We don't harvest names from other places. So it's hard, it's slow going for us to get people, so we're passing this around, and just if you're not getting our news flashes, Ava over here is the genius who puts them out. Sign this.
Yeah, and I just want to,
Can I change the
Meg
subject?
is an organizing force around this, in case you don't know Meg, but there've been subcommittees set up, so I just heard crosswalks and blinking lights and speed limits. So if there was a subgroup just saying where and what, it's easier to respond if it's a collective voice than I need one down on this street or I need one on that street, so.
We have subcommittees that work
Yeah.
on things.
It would be great.
So at this point, I'm calling on people who have not raised a question yet, so that's what I'll be prioritizing in. So one here and then one here. And then, well, I think you already asked a question, am I right? No, okay. All right, you're next. then.
This is for everyone. Do you support a residential exemption that shifts more of the property tax burden onto non-owner occupied properties owned by private landlords? And there are many towns that have put stuff like this in place: Somerville, Cambridge, Boston, Brookline, Chelsea, Marlborough, Nantucket, et cetera, et cetera. This would help deal with the student issue. It doesn't seem fair to have the property taxes go up for residents when the students keep coming in droves and creating problems, I think problems for the town. So, anyone?
I'll just add on to that, because you're asking one of the questions, in fact,
Yes.
it's here, that, as most of you know, Amherst year-round, Amherst population is 40,000 people. Only 13,000 are year-round. And our tax rate ranks 14th highest in Massachusetts.
Yep.
Which is about twice as high as other towns with our population size. Now, it just complements what you were.
Yes, thank you.
Exactly.
Vince?
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, so yes, this exemption, residential, yeah.
so I mean, I think in terms of dealing with taxation, I think one of the things we have to do first is make sure that people are not being overtaxed to create $5 to $7 million annual budget surpluses. That's crazy. The manager has to be reined in on that, and we have to make absolutely certain that we are not raising people to the absolute limit when the purpose is to take money out of their bank accounts and put it into the town's bank account.
Yes, but can you deal with the?
Yeah, so that one, since I'm a tenant, I would say that I have to see the particulars of it, and I would be particularly concerned focusing on the single-family homes that are rented out at ridiculous prices. I mean, I have a friend who rents out a 4-bedroom house to a family for $1,700 a month. That is, compare that to all the homes being rented out to students at $4,000 and $5,000 a month. And so I would like to focus it on the problem areas and especially the apartment areas that are still relatively affordable, like Colonial Village and Mill Hollow and some of the other apartments that have been here a long time, rather than do everything, everyone wants at the same rate. So I think it's a good idea. I think we just have to make sure that we focus it on the problem areas rather than hurt people who are already having their rents increased to match what happens at North Square and some of the other new buildings.
Okay.
Okay, some others want to, we'll just go straight down the line. Okay, and then Jill and then Kathy on this question.
So it's a good idea, one that we should think about. You've already mentioned that there are some municipalities that have applied this, it would be good to see how that has worked, what is different between those places and Amherst. Amherst is, if not unique, at least with the students that we have, that can change the dynamic. So yeah, I think it's an idea worth considering.
I just wanted to add too that I think the rent control ballot initiative that's going, hopefully will go through at the state level, would help to make sure that any changes like that then didn't result in disproportionately then affecting our renters. So I think there could be some interesting coupling of that, those types of changes once we do have, hopefully, seems like will be a very popular ballot measure if we had that in place, which also has there's a 10-year wait for any newly built buildings if it did go through. So maybe thinking about some of these like you said, phasing it in or prioritizing buildings that would be like among the first to have rent control in place. I think it could, be
I know
interesting to
the
explore.
answer to the question. If I was an assessor, and I know the answer to the question, and you will have it in front of you in several weeks to vote on. As part of voting the tax rate for next year, you will vote on whether you want to take that exemption or not. But Amherst only has 92% of the, tax roll is residential, and you cannot tax the commercial apartments as commercial, they are taxed as residential. So with 8% commercial in this town, the numbers just don't work, but you will vote on it in several weeks. You probably have voted on it 6 or 7 times already. When the assessor comes in with the motion to accept the tax rate for FY '27.
So, just on Hilda was talking about some of the complexities, but the assessor in Amherst has presented this a couple times to
That's right.
Amherst, to the council. And
Right.
we're not talking about commercial properties right now, but just differentiating.
That's a state law.
So one of the issues in Amherst is we have some low-income, large complexes, and it would hit that group. So the council froze on, was this a good idea or not? So if you're thinking of the big downtown buildings, people said, yeah, can we somehow separate out the kind of owner of the building? It's not owner occupied, but it was an issue that hit. We're not trying to get that population, so it was a difficult way within what we can do with the assessment on it. So my answer is, in concept, it's a great idea. Looking at specifics on how much you would gain, it turned out there wasn't that much to gain if you were worried about who you were gonna hurt with the split.
Okay.
The mush
So I don't, is that, like if we're collecting $60 million, that's how much we collect, but we're shifting it onto one and off of another, and who are you shifting it on to is the issue in Amherst. And so we will probably get her to, we have her as an assessor, we'll probably ask her to do it again, so we can look at it in detail. Oh, this is great, we have trick or treat.
You can get at the issue in terms of depreciation, in that the older buildings can be depreciated down to the lowest level, and the new ones at 100%. That's
And we don't have any trees.
Here's a question there.
Yes. Where?
Right here.
Barbara asked already.
Yes, but didn't you have your hand up
Yes,
before?
I did. Oh, sorry.
Have you taken it down?
No, I have not.
Okay, go ahead. please.
Hi, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a national model that we have here in Amherst Press, which is the Community Resource Equity, Safety, and Services model. It's an alternative policing model, and it's also, in terms of looking at efficiency with regard to complementing our APD and our fire department. It is a really important model for the community. It came out of community need. This past year, they had 2 of their positions frozen. They have not been able to actually implement the model that was presented by LEAP meaning the Law Enforcement Action Partnership that actually did a review of our APD calls, of our fire department calls, and that this would actually be complementary and very efficient in terms of dealing with non-violent, non-criminal situations here in Amherst. It came out of community needs, and it also came as a response to some major racial and unequal responses and biased responses. So what I'd like to know from all of you is, how much do you know about CRESS, and how much are you willing to support CRESS as an alternative policing model? And I just want to say, it's an efficient model, so it's not about defunding the police, it's about complementing the police to allow them to do the job that they're actually trained to do, which is to respond to criminal issues and crime and potential criminal issues, where they respond to non-violent issues, which is becoming more and more of a need in terms of their data around seniors who need help. And they can also follow up, so they also connect with social services or people who are unhoused or people who are dealing with all kinds of issues. So I'd like to hear from the candidates.
I believe very strongly in CRESS, and I think that, I think I answered similarly at the League of Women Voters Forum, that I don't believe that underutilization means a lack of need. I think it means that we just need to look more closely at how we could improve the program. For example, from what I've heard and from the Community Safety Working Group's recent report, that things like shifting the hours, most calls that would come into CRESS would be more in the 4 o'clock to midnight range, but they're open 8 to 5 or something like that. So there are clear ways where they're not, and also the routing of calls, and having other departments in town be supportive of CRESS, so it's not operating on an island and trying to meet its objectives. My background in nonprofit development and evaluation, I think, would play a role here. I think there are some good ways that we could evaluate the actual impact of these programs and then set them on a course for continuous improvement versus saying, okay, new program out the gate, didn't meet our goals right away, let's freeze positions or start to make cuts, which then makes it less likely to be able to improve and succeed. So I think looking at it logically, like I would any other program, and trying to support its success, I believe it to be very, very important.
Anyone else want to speak to this particular question? Yeah.
So as part of the CSSJC, which is the Community Safety Social Justice Committee, it's a mouthful. And that was the successor body of CSWG,
Yes.
Community Safety Working Group. I think I've done well. And one of the main things that we worked on was CRESS and trying to figure out how to work. This was when it was at its infancy and it was trying to grow some legs. I think we can support CRESS as a town, but for that to happen, we need to know what CRESS does. And I don't mean this in the sense that CRESS hasn't told us what they've done. I mean that the town manager had said there would be reports about what CRESS does, and we could look at that report. To determine success, we need to look at what it is doing to determine what the success is, and that's how we would be able to support CRESS. I think part of that support may also require that it moves slightly away from what it was initially envisioned to be. But we won't know that until we have reports to know if what it's doing right now is successful. So, in theory, we should all be supporting CRESS. In practice, we need to know what it does so that we could support it better. I don't know if that makes sense. If you want any more specifics from me.
And just disclosure, I am on the CSSJC.
I know that, yes.
Not only do I support it, But I think this is another instance where the lack of a specific oversight committee of the council, again, with 3 members, 3 counselors, and there is a counselor who co-chaired the group that proposed this, along with other issues related, post the George Floyd murder. And I think with an oversight committee, instead of waiting for a report from the manager that is 2 years after the fact, I think what we really need is to have a game plan and to have a committee that will every month deal with management folks from police, fire, and crest to insist that what the council voted to be done is being done. Anyone who reads the police report in the bulletin every week understands that Crest is not doing what it was designed to do, because we see the police being referred to as doing this, that, and the other thing for which they are poorly, if trained at all. And quite frankly, this is another example of where the failure to have, 2 of the committees that have been mentioned here, other than the finance committee of the council, need to be abolished. And there needs to be oversight committees directed at all the areas of town government, police, fire, and public works, a public safety committee, a public works committee, because that is the only way you are going to not only have oversight, but enable accountability, public accountability to happen about what the council says should be done and what the management of the town is doing.
I believe you had a question. Do you still have a question? And then, then we get, I think, then we have another, but then we might get into those who have already asked a question. Ask the section. Yes.
Kathy didn't have a chance this week.
Sorry, Kathy.
Well, I have to be really quick because I think this is a complicated issue. CRESS as a concept is broadly supported. It hasn't worked well. Jill mentioned hours. If you look at what Northampton's doing with a similar community responder, it's been much more successful, so learning from other places. But more successful, same number of people handling multiple times more calls. And what Vince just mentioned, we're following that too. Recent in a homeless shelter, woman had some cheesecake taken away, and the police were called to try to figure out who took the cheesecake. And we both said, and Larry read it and said, why isn't Crest there? Why did this rise to, so trying to figure out how those calls come in. And so it's been this complicated that it hasn't worked the way it was originally supposed to, but we also, in Amherst, unlike some of these others, Greenfield, put a never co-respond, never have one press, one police initially go out when you don't know what you're gonna find, where then the handoff could be, this is Crest. The police have 2 social workers working in the department that handle a huge number of calls because they go out together. So it may be trying to rethink, you don't want it all the time, you want to just divert some of it. So I think this is a conceptual issue of how do we make this work well.
We only have about 10 more minutes, okay? So.
Layla, I do have a question. I will make it quicker than I guess. But I've heard from all of you about prioritizing kind of responding to and listening to the needs of the community. But speaking from my own experience, sometimes the climate of the town council has not felt especially receptive to engagement. I have attended meetings where I have, either got childcare or in some cases, if it pertains to school, I couldn't get childcare, brought my children to the meetings, listened to hours of public comments, which essentially then feels ignored. I've heard sometimes community engagement groups like SOS that are structured and organized around certain issues that really the community feels strongly with, dismissed as, by some counselors as being divisive. And I've heard this word a lot too, both in terms of I understand that there is division that we need to address, but I also am a member of a community that, I'm Palestinian and we live in this world where the nature of my identity is considered divisive. So my question, I think this is true for so many members of the community who are immigrants or queer or trans folk or BIPOC, we're facing increasing risk by national and global policies that are trickling down to our communities and our local issues. And so my question is, how do you intend to approach the council in a way that's welcoming to the community and welcomes community engagement, and that does not exclude the experiences of communities like mine that might be divisive in nature?
Who would like to speak first to this question?
Okay, I'll do it. I'm sorry. I will answer your question by saying that we, that the former town meeting disposed of the issue of whether to have childcare at elementary schools in the space of a single year. The first time we overrode the finance committee on a vote, a 4-3 division of the town meeting. We then also, over the objections of the select board and finance committee, agreed not to buy Nigerian oil as a bylaw and forced the town to do it, which saved the town money and also sent a message, I think, that was heard. And then the next year, we did the same thing with regard to Tibet, and we provoked a letter from the Chinese ambassador. In my experience, from the town meeting point of view, that Gaza resolution that resulted in, I think, a very unfortunate revelation about the council's views would have been disposed of in an hour, and it would have been voted 2-1, and we would have gone on to the next item. And I think that is the attitude that should prevail at the council. I don't think anyone should be offended by anyone bringing up issues such as the Gaza resolution or democracy or anything else. That's not our business. Our business is to listen, and if there's a resolution before us, to vote yes or no and to go on to the next issue. And that's my view.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from other folks on this one too, but so hopefully we have enough time. But quickly, if you know my background, you know that this is extremely meaningful to me. As a community organizer and as getting to know District 1 a lot better and the community organizing that has happened here, I think we could really actively change this culture that Layla mentioned. Like, I've experienced it myself. I know I have, a lot of friends from marginalized backgrounds that have expressed really, really disappointing things to me. I think it needs to change immediately. And I think that there are some wonderful people with wonderful experience who could actually change it. I think it means looking at what we're doing wrong and being honest with ourselves and not, I think we can't heal any divides if we're ignoring this issue. And I'm grateful that it was brought up, and it's something that I will not be afraid to continue to bring up and speak about openly, because I really do. I think that's the only way we can heal it, is to learn from our mistakes if we've made mistakes and try to improve. And then on just very quickly on larger systemic issues being relevant to the council, I've spoken on this before and have a lot of information on it, but I really strongly believe that it's our role as our residents' closest representatives to hear the frustration and outrage about larger issues at the national level or global level, and do whatever we can do. If I were elected as a councilor, whatever I could do to help elevate those voices and join our community together so that we can try to change some of these bigger systemic problems.
Right here, okay.
So thank you for this question. It's an important one. We don't just live in Amherst. We live in the world. I think it's important to realize whether you're a counselor or whether you're going to be offering public comments, that first of all, you're a human being. And that means that if you're pricked, then you're going to bleed. And everyone here bleeds. When we move from being a human being, then we have to think about what it means to be in a community. Communities are different in some ways. But part of being a counselor or being a representative is keeping an open mind and listening to everyone. And on issues that we care about, we sometimes overestimate the support for those issues, and we underestimate what others might think on those issues. As counselor, what I've done and what I still intend to do is to keep an open mind. I keep an open mind as a human being. It's not easy being in the United States for 20 years with the accent that I have. I spent 7 years in Louisiana, 7 years in Texas before coming here. I know how challenging it is to be in the United States. But I don't wear that as a badge of honor. I wear that as the fact that when we are here, we all bring different experiences. I'm proud of those experiences. And so what I try to do is listen to everyone. Some of the things that we care about in Amherst, over in Texas, they think completely different. Those are not aliens. They are Americans. And so we should be thinking together, and that's what I intend to do.
I don't have a good answer for you. I do think the council meetings are more formalistic than they might need to be, so I don't have a good idea of how to open them up. You know, we had a struggle early on that would be hard to believe on whether we had to have public comment periods and how long they had to be. So there were some voices that said almost none to as long as, so we've gotten better at it, but I don't think we're good at it yet. We also, I don't hear as much from residents as I would like to, so I also don't know how to open up that process. DONA has been useful for this, but just really trying to think that we're accessible to hear little things as well as big things. But to the counselors particularly should be welcoming and inclusive.
Well, we have 4 minutes left, so I don't think Janet has had a chance to ask a question. I don't know if we'll have a chance to hear answers from everybody on this.
Sure. I've been thinking a lot about this question. Does the structure that the town council has to, and we have to operate in when we're debating issues, prevent or obstruct, if not prevent. So what I see is that a question goes to the council and then it moves around council committees, and that it gets considered by the council, and I get, if I'm lucky, 3 minutes, and if it's a bad night, I get 1 minute, and I'm already a nervous wreck because I'm speaking. Does anyone else have that
Does that sound crazy to you all?
I'm
No.
gonna do 1 minute answers, okay?
1 minute answer from each.
Well, just 'cause-
I think you're asking a general question that it's definitely concerns everyone here. Yeah. Anyone want to go first? Derek Parker?
Sure. I'll try to peer and pull out the question from what you have said. You're speaking about structures and how that can be challenging to get decisions made and how that is a challenge for the public bringing its ideas to the council. Is that correct?
I feel shut out.
Okay.
This is his time.
Yeah.
It's already half over.
Okay. I will simply say we could do a better job and we can talk afterwards. So, yeah, that'll be helpful.
Yes.
I think this is for,
Okay, we wrote a provision that we don't use very much in our rules that said there's something called discussion time, and we just haven't used it. And the idea of it would be 2 hours set aside, the community members came in, and before it moved to a committee, we're talking through something. And I think we haven't used it enough, and that would, depending on the issue, open it up a lot more. So thank you for asking that.
yeah, I'll just add quickly, I think it's tied to the last question too, and creating an inclusive space means creating a space where both the counselors among themselves are discussing in a positive, productive way, and that the community is able to be a part of that, so that I see improving public forums or using the public forum model more. And I've also been on the resident side of trying to do things through the council, and the open meeting law prohibiting you from doing certain things that, like, there are ways that if this doesn't, the discussion time, or having other ways that we can have the council come together to learn together about a topic, and potentially bringing in sets of facts or experts, or, you know, a way for us to be talking from the same set of facts versus just whatever folks think in the moment. I think having that preparation time is key. And yeah, I have lots of ideas for community engagement strategies to help people feel more comfortable, welcomed, and happy to be a part of the process.
I think that we also should include, in terms of interactions between the public and the council, their very formal and I think antiquated way of dealing with the school committee and the library trustees. In fact, I think that this is one of the sources of the problems the council and the school committee has. Because only school committee members only get 3 minutes, and they have to listen to the council talk about a budget about which, quite frankly, very few of them know anything. And we have to realize the council is at best, an 18th century organization created by, there were the people who were in charge of the town, who were the moneyed and propertied interest. And these rules have been formulated over the centuries by the very folks who didn't want the factory workers and so forth to be speaking to them and discussing with them. And I think we need to move away from that model.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm pledged to my faith of moderator, and I moderate this meeting to a conclusion at this moment. You know, that code is gonna flip at 5:02, and we're all gonna be locked in here.
It felt really good